Hey, my name is Willie Broad and welcome to Will Talks. I am super thrilled today because I have a phenomenal guest, someone who's been working in the field of education, school transformation, reform, someone who's really passionate about making sure that children get a high quality education. He has two schools, he has a PU college, he operates out of Bangalore. Today we have with us Srinivas Kumar. Srinivas Kumar, thank you so much for being here and accepting our request and invitation to have this conversation. Tell us a little bit more about where you're from, what you do, what got you into this. Just kickstart the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Willie. I started with being an industrialist. That's been how my father business was. And then after a period of time, it's when we decided that we move away from the sector of industries to move to the education field, where we thought that we could do much better to the community. And for as there's a lot of gap that we have found in things. So 2008 is a period when we started Chalsani Education Trust. And then we started with the first school, that is Whitefield Global School in 2008-9. Started with around 70 students approximately. And today we stand around 2,800 students.
Wow.
And covering KG to grade 12 and affiliated to CBSE. And parallelly we have other boards of PU College. And then of late, we have started in another international school that is called Vallistus International School. And this has been a great journey for us and a lot of learning that has been happened. We have constructively worked towards every year's experience we added into it and how we structurally moved forward. And that's where institution to institution we moved up. And then the new institution is an outcome of our experiences, collective experiences that we carried forward. Brought in a lot of knowledge from where we visited from other countries, learned a lot, and then contextualized to Indian requirement.
This is super amazing, right? Because when the Industrial Revolution happened, you decided to be the revolutionary bit of the industrial, age. And
Yes.
now I think the education revolution is happening. Like everybody depends upon education to make sure that the world is going to be a better place for our children to live. And I am so thrilled and happy and motivated and inspired, to know that when the education started booming, right?
Yes.
And, I think 20, 25 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, nobody really paid too much attention to education. They looked at education as, utility. Send the kid to school,
That's right.
That's it. As long as A, B, C's, it's okay. But I guess as the world became more complex, as the world became more crazy in that sense, we start, the requirements that children have in terms of skills and knowledge and understanding, the time that they have, the opportunities that they have, that has grown so much. And hence, the responsibility of school owners and school designers, that also increased so much. And I just want to say that I am in Vallistus right now with you. Thank you for inviting us over. And it's such a beautiful school. Like when I come through the school and I see the school, I'm like, this is not a work of an architect. This is not an architect.
Rightly put in.
Yeah, this is a work of an education designer, somebody who has education at the forefront of design. That's what I see. And I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about this school in particular. But tell me a little bit more about your journey so far, your personal journey. Like, who are you and how did you, fall in love with education? And over the time, 2008 to now is like, 14, 15 years and, maybe more than that. And what are those ups and downs that you faced? And because there's so many people in your shoes, you can motivate and inspire so many.
Yeah. I think I would like to start with how did the inspiration come in for me, right? Starting in school, right, when I was a student earlier, right? I felt that there is always a lack of opportunity created to a lot of students. Only there were specific students who were given an opportunity to grow, and then there was not consistently done. And then I think the choice of things or anything, might be it is a parental influence or the school influences, where both have an immediate impact on the child, right? When you look at all those things, that's the point, and I felt that the equal distribution of understanding what the child requires was not being set forth in those schools, in those period of era. I think that's somewhere in 80s, 90s, and that is an experience that it comes with to me when I was a student. And then, incidentally, my dad put me into the hostel. That time, he felt that I think I would improve much better. But so
It doesn't speak about the hostel, it speaks about you.
anyway, that's the way things happened. And then structurally, we moved on. And when I was a part of this field of manufacturing sector, and I explored it, I think that's when we try to understand, right? There's a lot of gaps, as in the people who are actually enrolled into the industry, or the people who are coming into the industrial sector or into any other businesses. There's a lot of gaps. They were not, it is only that they were driven by what is there in the market. The most trend was either you get into an engineering stream or you get into a medical field. Only these were the two common streams that was looked at, and others were just put into the diplomas or any other graduations. So these things were actually the factors which I felt that I think there's a lot of things that we need to do in the educational field. And those period of time, it was very few branded schools, or there would have been some schools with hefty pocket guys who were part of those things. So then when we started it, we started with the completely bare-minded in that, keeping in the thoughts that we need to see to that every child is being looked at, addressed, and needs being addressed very uniformly, right? Every child is different. We all understand, and this is the thing. But then how do we address to each child's requirements? How do we see to that need of the child is addressed? And then how he moves on to the ladder as he goes on from grades to grades, right? So that's how our journey started. And we started at that point of time in Whitefield when we established. We were the first school to come with a completely digital classrooms, where we wanted to bring in different modes and way of teaching, a better way of teaching. We started slowly. We built a brand structurally, and then after a period of time when we looked at things, there was some gaps coming in. We had a limited exposure. We had a principal to back us at that point of time. But then we had some changes coming in organizationally. We didn't find somebody who was meeting our requirement at a particular point of time. Then somebody had to come in place, and then we worked it out. Everything is like, we have seen to that what the child's requirement is at that point of time. So what I feel is, unless you don't address all the stakeholders' needs and requirements, and you will never have a successful growth in this education institutional point of it. The other major factor is the teachers, which I felt there's a lot of dirt and the gap coming in. I think we all believe, right? There are at least 30 to 40% teachers who are really who want to get into the profession as a teacher. But the remaining, if you look at it, they are not. They have come it as another option, the secondary option of it. Now, when you look at these people, I think there should be a lot of training to them. They're not actually getting into the place just for to really impart the proper education. They've just come because that's an option. Now, some of them actually convert into a good teachers, when some of them don't do it. So there's a lot of gap where there's a training gap, which is that, and nobody addressed these parts in those period of time. So we started addressing all these at those points. So that's how one of our mitigating steps of issues that we started addressing. And then we moved on to the teachers. From teachers, we moved on to the children, how they are growing, what is the need of it. Year to year, the needs changes. The influx of the type of parent clientele also influences you, and the type of academical challenges that you also get into it. So these are, I think, what people also forget to do is that they don't try to understand how a school has to be independently working, understand the needs and requirement of the school, and contextualize again the point which I'm trying to bring in, that you contextualize to the needs of that particular area and this one. If you don't do that, I think then your school is not going to the right direction.
It's like a fish out of water, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
but the 2-3 things that comes to my mind when you speak like this, right?
Yeah.
I have seen a very different perspective, a very different method of working when anything is run by people who have factory experience, like old economy businesses, factory production houses, their approach to anything I have seen very methodical, very systematic, very scientific. Because when they get an order, there is a particular, they'll calibrate their machines, they have a shop floor, they have a conveyor belt, they have input cost, they have output cost, they check for quality, they have tolerance, they have variability, they look for data,
Exactly.
they check how much errors are there, they check how to improve productivity, how to reduce idle capacity. How, if you look at all that, when such people like you, and I'm getting that feeling as I talk to you, your approach to the school comes from that analytical background, because the number one priority in your factory is to reduce errors,
Correct.
reduce rejections, increase approvals. And in a case like this, that's what you're looking at in terms of learning. So I can see that there is so much that new school owners and new school principals who've never done work in old economy,
That's right.
they have to learn that and bring it in the new economy. You may be 25 years old and do a startup with, somebody with zero experience,
That's right.
from the shop floor versus somebody with experience. That's where the value comes from. Phenomenal. I'm just so glad to hear that. And that last thing that you said, about context, absolutely stunning. Because, India, to a certain extent, is a little cookie cutter kind of method. Go abroad, copy something, bring it here, and don't improvise. Just copy and bring it here, thinking it's going to work. One Starbucks works in this thing, then you just want to take that same format and bring it over here.
That's the worst thing to do.
It's the worst thing to do. But if you look at Starbucks itself, when Starbucks comes to India, they bring masala chai. That we don't want to learn.
Yes.
So I love the fact that you said that the idea is not to, let's say, go copy from the best school in the world and make a replica of that. The idea is to become the best school on our street, in our pin code, in our village. Isn't that something that you're saying? You want to share some more about that?
Yes.
How did you contextualize?
Yeah,
How it helped?
that's
Something
definitely, see, the point everybody needs to understand is education sector being a very sensitive field. I mean, child's growth is very sensitive to the parent, right? And the child's path of growth is also an impact which will impact the child's overall growth as a profession that he takes in, or the choices that he takes in. Now, unless you don't understand that and you're not sensitive towards these point of it, how will you actually mold a child? Now, for example, in a classroom, let's look at the things, right? Now, this particular child has some issues, or he's not able to understand a particular subject based of it, anything. Now, a teacher sometimes just brushes it, or she moves with it. She tries to engage him, but have you seen that a particular child, after a period of time, he starts losing an interest on a particular subject?
Yes, I have.
It happens, right?
Yeah.
So multiple times. Now, what is happening is that is actually driving the child to actually get away from that particular subject, as he's blocked his mind towards it and he's moving away. Now, all these things are an influential factor on the child. Now, you cannot get that day back to the child. You cannot get that year back to the child. Now, a third standard child, assuming that the impact that is created, he'll not come and repeat it. He's not a machine to come and repeat that. He's moving to the next class. That is the fourth. Now, what happens is the impact is already carrying forward to his fourth grade. Then he carries on it to the fifth grade. Now, where is it when you talk about the different subjects being integrated and all this thing? This subject is always being that way behind him, that it is not a thing which he likes it. That's where it drives him that no, it does not. So I think we're not very sensitive to all these things. And I think even the teaching community, some of them are sensitive, but I think some of them are not even sensitive about all these issues. Schools are not sensitive about it. It is very tough. I do understand it is a tough job for a school to look at from when you have voluminous numbers coming in, and then the quality impacts. There's a lot of multiple fold factors falling into all these things. But I think there should be some place where we all put in that efforts to see to that we minimize it. I know that we cannot reduce it 100% in the day of scratch that you start do something. But at some point you start to bring it down so that things can be minimized, much better evolution. The humankind is much betterly developed. That's what I'm looking at it. And that's where our thought process, we being our institution, the trustees, we all feel that we need to be sensitive to every factor of of it, and that's where all the stakeholders' values have to be taken into consideration. So that's where we think from.
What the feeling I'm getting is, when as I listen to you, and I know that you're a school owner, you're a management, you're a person of influence, and you have so many teachers working in your Whitefield Global School, you have so many teachers working in your Ballister School. When they hear or when they experience that this is, the essence of our management, okay? Some days you get it, some days you won't. I'm not saying that, but this is what we set out to do. I think that itself is a motivating factor. It's an inspiring factor. I don't think any teacher wakes up saying, I don't want to do a bad job today, right?
No.
It's just that when they know that this institution is based on these values, it just there's so much alignment.
The other point is these teachers also, when you talk about teachers, right, they come from different environments. They've been working in a different environment. Different school has different managements have different working styles.
Culture is different, no?
There's a lot of things. They have that influential factor which comes in. But they also need to know, once they have come to a particular place, they also need to remove themselves out from the particular thing and learn about it. So that is not which they're not doing it. Okay,
Momentum and inertia.
Yes.
So how do you stop and wake them up and reset?
No, we need, that's where the training comes in place. That's where your vision and mission of an institution comes in place. That's where you continuous driving. And I think that's where the principles of the school have to drive this thought processes, everything into the teachers and all the other people who are. It cannot happen in day one. That's rightly people have to understand that. And it's in.
But you can start.
Yes, you can start. You need to make a start somewhere. Right?
So tell me one thing. Just a question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What has been your checklist or what has been your method of identifying or deciding? Because so many people you may have interviewed for principalship. I mean, let's look at this. It's such a capital heavy business it is. Okay, and I call it a business in the positive sense. And I'm saying, you spend crores of money because this is land and building and infrastructure, right? And then you hire a principal who is, that word principal is a funny word. It's actually almost like a CEO. Call him whatever, call him or her whatever, but it's the whole institute is sort of dependent on that. And the whole investment is riding on that.
Correct.
And I have a feeling like you can't get it wrong, no. You know what I'm saying? You don't get multiple chances at it, correct, right? It's like a movie that you launch. What do you have any checklist? Of course you have. I'm saying, is there anything you'd like to share about your ups and downs in that?
Yeah, see, I think I would be telling you that I'm lucky getting the right heads up till now, the principals whom you call. They've been really great with me if I look at it. But what I looked at in the principal is how much of his understanding is towards the need of what, as an education system, what is his overall approach towards things? What is his level of understanding, how he has taken the knowledge based overall from it. It is not that you sitting in one particular place, you think that you have understood everything and you can drive everything. I think that's not the way a right person can be. Unless he is not explorative, he doesn't understand how things are happening, how you bring in it better to your institution when you start driving it, right? So that's the type of qualities that I look at a principal. And that's where I think most of my principal have been well within this one. And it's always been that see, what is happening is, if you look at it, unless you don't set in a proper systems, right? Structurally, the systems, if it's not set in, then things won't happen. And I think systems, I think this is a very new aspect if you look at, other than the new modern schools that comes in with the set processes and policies and structure, right? The older schools never had it. That's where you see it. They were people-driven, not processes-driven.
Correct.
Now, when you look at people-driven schools, what happened is after a particular, the principal who used to stay for 10, 20 years, they would have run well, and suddenly the principal moves, then the school starts falling down. Now, what is happening is just because of its brand name, it's carrying forward for a few more years. But the perception, the working, the things are completely messed up.
People say it's not like before.
It's not like
that's
before.
What they say, right?
Yeah. So unless you don't get into the process driven, right, and that is where we from the trust and the schools, right, we make it a point that most of our schools are process driven, and that's the process driven actually approach gives a much better way for the school, the principals or the staff, the staff to understand that these are the set lines, and this is the way you need to work, and this is how the deliverance is. This is how you need to address the needs and requirements of the parents, your children, how you see to the growth of the child is happening. All these are a part and parcel of this.
This is amazing because somebody asked Jack Welch, the CEO of GE, and they asked him, why is it, what is this GE way and how GE is doing such great things? And he made this statement. He said, good processes make good people.
That's right.
Good processes make good people. And when I heard that, I was really young in college, and I was like, no. It's probably good people make good processes. And then for a long time, I kind of believed that. And then I realized good people can make good processes.
Perfect.
But they don't. They don't codify it. They don't write it down. They don't put it in books. They don't document it. We document things only if we have to get a PhD, some thesis, some homework,
Correct.
some essay. We don't document it because we just want to make a invisible system or process visible. Correct?
Correct. That's
So definitely good people, if they document it well, will make good processes. Assuming that is not done, it's good processes make good people. And I love the fact that, and I still feel it comes from your industrial background, because you would never dare think of starting a factory without processes.
definitely you cannot.
You just can't,
You can't.
right? You have to configure the whole place
Yes,
based on specification.
that's right.
And that is what I love about these, talking to people like you. It just makes so much sense. Would you want to share a little bit more about in a factory shop floor, data is key. Every day they say accidents on site or breakdowns, downtime. I don't know what else. Error.
Yes, that's
So many things. There are different kinds of lights: red light, blue light, green light, systemic error. So many things are there, no?
That's right.
And maintenance and just so many things. So how was your transition from, let's say, this kind of a data-rich sort of environment, and you did a school,
Correct.
a couple of schools, which is services, correct? Which is not like, it is services.
Correct.
Dealing with people who are, again, very hard, very emotional.
Yeah.
Immediately a tear will fall when you talk.
Correct. Yes.
Right? And it's almost like people think, all the data is not required. It's only this. So how did you manage that personally? You would have been in a little bit of, like a...
Yeah, the grinding one.
You would have been drenched between all this,
Yes.
right?
I mean,
How did you...
It was a very tough.
Did you bring any system?
Yes,
Did you do
yes,
anything
yes.
cool? Would you like to share about it?
Yes.
My God, your eyes already like going on.
I mean, my industrial experience also comes in with. I had been. We were the part of this certification. You generally have this ISO certification
Yes.
for all this. So I was one of the
Auditors.
auditors,
Oh.
internal auditors for my. So that's where the data comes in, right? The importance of data also comes in, and that's when we wanted to bring into the school. Those experiences definitely valuable, and but bringing them, it was not so easy because people never. And you need to understand is too much of data driven aspect of it into the teachers or into this one diverts away them from the core job of it. And that's a very sensitive and important factor, right? Now, what is happening is, in generally, most of it, technology has come into the field of education, right? And there are multiple factors which has come in, but there has never been a technology which is seamless in nature. It has been like part and parcels of it. You address in one particular part and you don't address the other part. There's a gap, and then the teacher has to be doing multiple aspects of it. That's where these gaps have been. The data losses is there, if I call it from the industrial term of it. But when you look at from the child, from the school point of it, the data is very, very important, and which people have not ascertained or looked at it. Assuming a child who's moving away from one particular A school to a B school, right? Now, what happens is the characters, the boys, or the girls, right? Overall development, learning, other than the marks report, when you go to the other school, there's nothing that he gets carried out.
Right.
What is happening is now where is that new set of the school, the teacher who is coming in for, and the child who is getting into the class is already new into the dynamics of the class. The teacher sees him into a different, she analyzes him for 1 week and then decides whether this guy is not. But the boy or a girl would have a different character in him, so he might be reserved at that point of time. So, but he is being addressed or being identified in a different. So, unless you don't have this data and that data is carried forward with the child along with him, I think there's a huge data loss. And I mean, that's where my sensitivity of the child's growth is coming into factor, and we are not addressing these. Now, that is the point when I had this gaps also. Initially, I did manage with whatever resources I had, but then when I started feeling these gaps are increasing more and more, that's when I started a new firm from the technology sector. I went into a firm which can bridge the gaps that we are finding in, right? Mainly into the path of covering the learning part of it mainly. I'm not looking at an administrative aspect, which is already there. Yeah, everybody is there. But it might add a little bit value here and there, but it is not addressing the core value of the child's growth. So that's when we started this firm called Editive Private Limited. And it's just started in the pandemic. I think that's the free time then we all got during the lockdown.
Start
right?
passion projects.
Yeah. Sitting at home, we all decided, I started analyzing, and then I started touching up with my good friends and the good experience once in the industry and this one. Then we all understood that the huge gaps are there. How do we mitigate? How do we address these gaps? People are there. Technology, so many people are coming with bits and pieces. If you look at it, most of the technology which has come today is the passion-driven or entrepreneurial ideas that comes into place. But do you think that is it going to be school adding value into the school closure part of it? No, I don't think so. It might be a commercial venture, commercial part of this after the school hours, but not in it. So that is where I think we need to address it, and that's where we are working on.
Tell us more about
this. The data
is
more something very important.
Tell us more about this this passion project you have, because coming from you, I'm sure it's going to be like, it's going to address a problem. It's going to be a solution, right?
So what we are, in this particular thing, what we are addressing is we wanted to see to that we capture data at the occurrence of time. When the data, what is happening at the point of time of occurrence, right? So unless what happens is, now I'll give you another example. Now a teacher, there are 20 students around in the class. She makes a notes of it. She gives some activities. She takes a view of it, and then she makes a report of it. Now, what the teacher does is the proximity of 45 minutes of time. I don't think she'll be able to cover everything. Now, what she does is she covers 10 of the students at this point of time. She moves away to her next class. She doesn't have immediately back-to-back classes. Then what happens is, at the end of the day, in the last 1 hour period, she sits and makes a note. Now, don't you think that a teacher at that point of time, when she has missed away and she goes and sits and write back, she's actually missing a lot of points. She wouldn't have the same mindset, the same thought process. In between, she would have had different thought process working in different classes she would have attended. Now, all these are things which are not actually giving you an accurate idea about what the child's performance is. Aren't you putting in a wrong notion to a particular child's growth?
A lot of errors starts creeping
in. There's a huge error. There is a huge error. You're not actually accurately, tasking the child's performance there. So these are the things that which I understand. So that is where we wanted to set in a clear process from the time your lesson plan to how it's being delivered, how it has been captured, how the child's progress is happening, whether the minimum learning levels are happening. Okay, and then how the teacher is, if there is a child who has some gap, then how you are addressing that. If there is an excellent child, how are you seeing to that the child's also attention is being kept in, continue with that. So what are the effective needs and methods that you can use it. So this technology, what we are trying to bring in is mainly to aid the teacher. It is not going to replace any teacher, because I don't think anything can replace a teacher. Technology cannot replace a teacher. I think that should be well understood by everybody. But what we need to look at is how much you can actually support the teacher, how much you can bring in an information, support, use and resources.
Because her time is valuable. No?
Yeah, yes, that's right. You give the cut her off from the administrative time. There's a lot of schools which put in a lot of for the teachers, right? You send a report to this, you send a report. They sit and go on writing down the reports, but actually the deliverance is reduced. Now, who is at loss? The child is at loss. Now, how
The
are you
collateral
mitigating
damage
this?
is huge.
Yeah, these are long-term damages which you're not seeing it at any point of time, and that's where we want to come in. We want to bring in the technology to aid the teacher, and this is not going to be easy. You need to understand that unless an academician team is not working with with an experience, with the flow of things, this cannot be done by any other technology partners. Let me put that. So that's how the technology
This is not a tech solution.
It's not a
This is an education solution.
Exactly.
Exactly,
You
right.
use the resources. Technology is definitely there. After the pandemic, it has multifold increased. The need of technology or the influence of technology into our lives have multifold increased. So how do you use it to the
they say
betterment?
good teachers can do better with technology,
Correct. That's right.
but bad teaching gets amplified with technology.
So you need to do that is right. And this also gives an opportunity for people who are monitoring or looking at it to see where the whole issues are. Have you understood? If you have the AI ML coming into place, where if it can give an indicators to you that okay, there is something wrong in this direction, or there is something which is not working for a child to a B child, right? Then I think it also helps the monitors or the people who are looking at the coordinators or the senior segment people to see to that how you can address at that earliest point of time. So data is very important, where we are actually coming out from, and these data which we continue keeping, and when we start using it, a child who is completing by the time he grows to grade 8, he will start deciding which sector of life part of it that he needs to move in, right? Which is that professional career that he needs to drive himself. And these data can actually be more useful. And unless you don't have them properly built in, structured it, and then you use it, I think that's where the drawbacks come in. And that's where data is very, very important for these things.
That's just phenomenal, actually, because one, on the design end, you have to have strong academic understanding, and you run schools.
That's right.
Right? On the tech side of the story, you are doing everything to enable education.
Exactly.
On the implementation side, you need to have believers who believe in the ed and the tech.
Correct.
Not the administrative sort of side of the story.
Correct.
But what we see outside is some very fancy and very enthusiastic, rather over-enthusiastic marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where will they land up to.
Yeah, and I remember like 15 years ago there was this make your classroom filled with your boards and this and that, and I go to those schools today and say, how's it going? And then no. So really you got to bite the bullet, and some of the words that you use, like you want to identify the root cause, go to the point of occurrence, reduce the delay. It's not just about taking any data, it's about taking the most important data, right? The idea is not voluminous data. The idea is like, what is most important? Is it accurate? The words like accurate that you were using, no?
Correct.
Like, is it accurate data? The fact that a gap that comes up in a second standard child's academic life starts volumetrically expanding.
Exactly.
Because a curriculum is designed with progression. If they don't know everything that they were supposed to know in second, they'll definitely flip over a couple of things in third standard. So those, I think, are very critical. And one thing that comes to mind when you speak is that one of the reasons why tuitions and all work a lot is because parent values individualized coaching. They value individualized coaching and personalized coaching. And I think schools can easily do that if they have a data system.
That's where the pitch comes in.
Yeah, if they have a data system, as you're talking about, to be able to identify potential errors and get to it like really fast. What is this thing that you built? This software, what's it called?
This is a platform called Edutive Private Limited. Edutive.
Okay.
Edutive is again diversified into educational initiatives. Mainly towards the field of education, right?
Fantastic.
We have come up actually with...
Are you inviting schools and your other, are you inviting other educational institutions to come get in touch with you? And
No, presently what we have done is we have come up with the minimum value product. That's the 360-degree assessment, which is not there now, which is a part of the NEP 2020. We have actually built a complete, very robust 360-degree assessment pattern, which actually guides you and sees the in-depth of each child's, how the performance is. And when you look at the platform and when you see that, it shows where the child actually is having an issue and addressing that particular issue. And that is where we are talking about pin depth of understanding into the core issue of a child. You don't need to, when you're looking at performance of a child, you don't need to get into each and every part of it. When you have an highlighter of telling that this child has an issue in a particular maths as a subject, and in maths also, where is his foundational measure, whether if he's in that particular grade and he's having an issues with addition, subtraction or something, it just gives you an indicators based on the metrics that you have actually structured it out. So that gives an indicator, and then that's where the teacher has to come in and try to address the child's point of it. Now, when you start addressing those, then actually you're reducing the gap for the child. Or else if you don't address those things, then the gap is increasing. That's where the issue is multifold going to increase. So this is where we wanted to bring in is how much of data that we bring in, how we use the environment of teaching, how the replacement. When you talk about, I'm not a great advocacy to tuition, because the point is, child in a school and a classroom has a different methodology of teaching, learning and ability. Now, when it goes in individual, the teacher looks at from a different person. I don't tell that every tuition teacher is great, or there are some excellent teachers, but their methodology. Now the child gets into two different things, they get confused around it. Now what happens is, again, you're putting the child.
There's no consistency.
There's no consistency. Now the child, whether the methodology that the teacher told and the classroom is right or this, now you're actually putting the child into a confusion state. Now this is where we want to also, this technology will also come into place where the child, even after the school hours, can use the resources, see his data. The teacher can also start giving him, connect him with the various other resources. The technology can actually adapt to multiple resources like you have Google has, or you have any other thing, any other, I don't want to name any in particular of it, but you use those as a resources, build up your self, then the teacher actually analyzes once he comes back to the school, sees to this, whether the progression is there or not, then you move forward to it. I
think what you're saying is, get the learning right.
Correct.
In the classroom, right? Get the learning right. When the learning is right, children are happy.
Correct.
Children are happy and growing and learning. Parents become happy.
That's right.
Because parents are scared for their children's future, right? This is
Exactly.
all best effort basis.
Definitely.
And when that happens, parents continue to be in your school, and parents ask other people also to come, because everybody likes to share the good news.
Yeah,
right?
The best is always like to be shared.
Yes.
But at every point, you need to also understand is there's a huge cost into all this thing. There's a huge investment. Good schools need to invest more into technology. Good schools needs to invest into good quality teachers. Everything else there is a cost to it. But without putting in cost, because we are in a society of such, where we have a lot.
Always trying to skim.
And the people have a perception that everything can be got at and just being a teacher. You cannot do that. I mean, it cannot. It's not realistic in nature. Might be in some places it works, but it's not extensively. It cannot work in such things.
Right. And the one question that I see you asking every school principal or every school owner, I think from what I think that you are asking is, if learning is so important for the child, for the country, and for the business as well, so that there's commercial discipline and it's sustainable, the big question I see you asking everyone is, how do you know children are learning, right?
Yes.
That is why. And that's why you need the systems and the data and everything just to answer that question.
Correct.
Are my children learning? How can I help them learn better? So that everything just kind of falls in place. Wow. Thank you so much, Srinivas Kumar. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I mean, you've given us so much time. You've invited us to this beautiful school. I really think anyone who's listening to us should definitely, save a lot of money rather than flying all the way, halfway across the world. I think I entered this school, and for that, immediately I'm transported into a mecca of learning, into a heaven of learning. So beautifully designed.
Yes, I think this school is an outcome of our combined efforts. I mean, what we see in internationally acclaimed schools, right, all around the globe. I think what you see there is there here. It's only that it's a passion and thing that has to be driven, and the team here is driving that.
My request to you is have open days once a month.
Yes,
I'm telling you, just have open days once a month. Invite the people of Bangalore,
yeah,
right, to come and just walk around. Just walk around.
definitely.
Walk around. Have
I
an
mean,
open-
the campus is always open.
yeah, but just to have an open day and invite schools all over the country to just come like that open day. Let them come. Let them take a look. Let them see. Because collectively we can make a better country.
Correct, definitely agreed.
Thank you, Srinivas
Thank
Kumar.
you. It's
Such
my
a
pleasure.
pleasure meeting you and talking to you today.
Yeah, great. Thank you.